Okay, it says we are streaming.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Looks like we have a quorum. Kathy, can we get a roll call?
Don Kessinger. Just say present if you're here. Don Kessinger.
Present.
Don Foy.
Present.
Monica Terry.
Present.
Amy Blankenship.
Present.
Damon Green.
Present.
Chuck Cornforth.
Present.
Leonard Green.
Present. Yes, we have a quorum, so we'll call this meeting to order. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
This is Monica Terry. I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Cornforth, second.
And properly moved and second that we approve the agenda as presented. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Don Kessinger.
Aye.
Don Foy.
Aye.
Monica Terry.
Aye.
Amy Blankenship.
Aye.
Damon Green.
Aye.
Chuck Cornforth.
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. That will move on to the next item. School year opening and calendar revision. Dr.
Yes,
Rudley.
sir. Yes, thank you very, very much. Appreciate all of you for being here today. Several things to kind of discuss and go through, and then certainly happy to answer as many questions as may arise. We've been talking about this for a while, and obviously ever since the ending of the school year and things concerns with the opening of school and what that was going to look like. I mentioned to you in the June board meeting that I had begun meeting with all of our team members, all of our administrators, our leaders in the district, and problem solving around what we could potentially do, what it would look like, and having options. We did a survey to our families and to our staff, and based on some of that information, and then giving you additional input and information in July, and then certainly several videos that I've been doing as well to try to update as much as I can. And we've kind of come to a spot now where, based on even things that have happened this week, that I felt like I needed to come back to you and kind of propose how we would start the school year for 2020. So with permission, sure, I'd like to share just some information kind of about where we are and kind of how we got here at the moment. I'm going to share just a couple brief things with you, and then certainly try to answer any questions that you may have. As we started to look at the reopening, I mentioned that we did a survey. So I want to just show you a little bit of that survey. And one of the things that I said, I think even in June and July, is I knew that once we did a survey, that depending upon what was happening in the world, we could potentially get even a different answer 3 weeks later and 3 weeks later. I can tell you, if I would have done a survey last week to this week, I think I probably would have gotten a different response just based upon what's happening in the world. But I'll show you this, that it just kind of shows you, again, one of the questions was, which ones do you support? Obviously, a higher percentage of our families and our staff supported the hybrid mixture. I'm going to break that out for you just really quick. This is our staff just broken out by itself. You can see more of our staff were in support of a hybrid instruction mixture rather than a in-person. And then when I do families, it changes just a little bit. And so our parents were a little bit more obviously in support of an in-person instruction than a hybrid. But the other thing that I will call your attention to is just the spread. There's not a huge variety between one or the other. That told us that we knew, which we thought already before, that we were going to have to provide options for our families. And so no matter what, we had kind of already set that we needed to have an all online option for our families that may just didn't feel safe sending their kids back no matter what was going on. And that was part of what was based upon that. Obviously, as the numbers kind of progressed and kind of ended up not going in a positive direction for Jackson County, I shared with the board in July that we were really focusing on this hybrid instruction model because I just didn't see us being able to do a completely in-person instruction based upon the numbers and the health department guidance that we were receiving. So that's the reason why we were honing in on that and trying to determine what that was really going to look like and providing a little bit of that information as we could out to our families. Hope you can read this. It's a little bit small, so I'll read through it for you just briefly. But again, one of the other things that we considered was how do we want to start school? Do we delay? Do we not delay? This topic I've obviously has heated up the last 2 weeks, and you've heard between Kansas kind of delaying from the governor, but then not from the school board, but several other school districts in Kansas and now in Missouri as well, delaying and doing some different things with their calendar. You can see that between strongly support and somewhat support, how many of you would support a later start date due to what's happening? And that's 62% proving that. And then if we did push the start date back, what would you support in terms of different options and how to make up those days? I'm not sure that that really told us anything other than everybody's kind of on the fence about how you would want to do that. I can tell you the staff was more in favor of extending the school day. So we're taking all those things kind of into account, but I wanted to make sure that you had some of that information so that you can kind of get a sense of why we are here. I want to share a little bit of information for you, and I'll try to break it down as much as I can, but this is actually from the Jackson County Health Department website. And so I ended up taking this snapshot yesterday afternoon. So this is not a live picture. The numbers have changed just a little bit. But one of the things that I wanted to show you was number one, total cases and everything. And then this number here of cases per 1,000, 6.47. But I'll call your attention here to our zip code of 64030, and that we have 266 cases and the rate per 1,000 students being over 1, which is considered to be one of the red spots and one of the hot spots now in our area. Last night, as I was preparing for this presentation, I went back to the Jackson County website to look up something, and I realized that the data had already changed between the afternoon and the evening. So you see 2466 and you see 50 deaths. Sad to report that the cases went up to 2554 and 3 additional deaths from when I looked at it the previous, that afternoon and to last night. So you can tell that this is constantly changing. I'm sharing this with you just to let you know some of the information that I'm constantly looking at and my team is constantly looking at. Mary Rhodes is constantly looking at and providing us updates and information, and Jackson County Health. I'm going to scroll through 2 additional pieces that just give you a lot of information. And I'm not necessarily trying to point out anything. I'm just trying to get you to have a sense of kind of what's going on. This is one of the areas that we've watched that there is an outbreak in the Life Care Center of Grandview, and 30 additional cases that have been reported in that facility. But that's the kind of level of detail that you can get from this in terms of what's going on. You can see some other areas on the left there also. This is what I was referring to as in a lot of information that just kind of screams like I don't understand, but you can see this map in particular that shows you different outbreaks and different colors of red of just kind of what we're dealing with at the moment, of some things that are not going the direction that I think our health officials had hoped that it would. And so again, here Jackson County, you can see that number that we were talking about before. This was yesterday afternoon again, so it hadn't been updated to the 53 deaths, but that's that same information. This is just a more global view of pulling out just a little bit further. The last slide that I'll show you is another very important one that we watch because our health departments continue to talk about this. Not only the overall percent positive being 6.44%, which my understanding from health professionals is they're looking at between 3 and 4 as being kind of an average, and that's considered good. But this 14-day average percent positive being over 10% is considered to be very high and to be a very bad number. And that's one of the things that they start talking about in terms of whether or not students should be in large groups and being in school and things like that. That's one of the data points that I point to as some danger sides from the health department. Anything that I can answer about those specific things, I'm not quite finished, but I don't want to come off of this in case there's any specific questions around the Jackson County health data.
Kenny, this is Monica. I have one. So with these numbers, if you go, can you go back to the graph with the hot spots that showed the Life Care Center, John Knox Village, that right there. So Jackson County includes Life Care Center, John Knox, looks like Side by Side, Ventral. Those are all big hot spots with large numbers in a small area. Do you have any clue how that is affecting our total overall numbers? Because if we've got large numbers in those concentrated areas in Jackson County, it kind of makes me feel like maybe we don't have quite as many cases outside those areas. Maybe those are affecting our overall numbers and percentages a little bit. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% believe that impacts our overall number. 100%, yes. I think that that's part of it. I share all of that just because I think while that makes me somewhat feel a little bit better in terms of looking at the Grandview specific kind of area, I also know that if you think about the news that was shared yesterday in terms of there was a large gathering of students that was just across the way and has now produced several positive cases from this party that involved about 6 different schools. We're not listed in there, and I don't know if any of our students did attend, but I think looking at not only the Grandview, but then looking at our entire area, I think makes a difference also of how we're all connected, and our kids and our families go a lot of different places in this general area. So while I do think that impacts our overall numbers there, what I'm hearing from Grandview overall is that our entire area is still of concern at the moment, and that our numbers continue to go up even in our area, not just in those particular facilities. So again, I'll kind of take you back through. So I've been updating you, and again, I did a video on Monday to kind of inform as many of our families as I could about what was going on, because I know we're getting a lot of questions as we got closer. One of the things that I shared, even in the video, that had just happened that Monday, which was just this past Monday, was Casey Moe stating that they had received some information from their health department that concerned them enough to where they were going to back away from any of their in-person instructional plans for the beginning of the school year. So once that occurred, that began to cause some challenges and some issues with any number of people calling and us talking and kind of, because I didn't have that information prior to that knowledge coming out. Then the mayor of Kansas City going on a press conference that morning, on Tuesday morning, and stating that his suggestion for our area schools, which again, if you remember, Martin City is in the Kansas City, Missouri city, that his suggestion was schools wait until after the holiday of Labor Day to start school, based on the information. And then he was calling for the other health departments to come out and to talk about the numbers in their areas and say something similar. We began to reach out to Jackson County Health and began to have conversations with them. We are meeting with them actually on Tuesday of next week to get some additional guidance. But the information that we're hearing from them is all the information, the numbers that I shared with you about some significant challenges and concerns that they have with the direction that our numbers are going. So even from what happened from Monday to through the end of Tuesday, several of these things were still kind of changing along the way. So I shared with you some concerns that I was already starting to have. Then when talking with our CNI team as well about making sure that we are in the best possible position to do what we're trying to do at any point in time throughout the school year, better than we did in the spring. We know that at different points of time, we may have an outbreak of something. So we may have to close a classroom down, 2 classrooms down, 3 classrooms down. We may have to quarantine at any number of times throughout the course of the year. And we know we'll have a distance learning module to be able to do that. So we needed to do something better. Last month at the board meeting, the board approved Canvas. And so that's a new rollout for us to make sure that we are able to engage our community better, our parents have a better option, and that we can engage with our students a little bit better. To do that effectively and to make sure that we have enough time for our teachers to be trained, that we have enough time to roll it out to our families and for everyone to be on board, I've had several conversations with our administrative team, with our principals, just about the start of school and what this needed to look like and when it needed to look like. fast forward now to where we are today, and I stand in front of you being the person who in no way, shape, or form wants to make this recommendation to you. Our students need to be in school, and I feel very strongly about that, missing them for as long as we've not been in. But based upon everything that I hear, I don't have a conversation with one medical professional that says, yeah, just go ahead. You're going to be fine. Go ahead and do this. It's not going to be a big deal. I think everyone's very concerned, but I can also tell you from a staff perspective, I'm getting a lot of questions and concerns from staff who are very concerned. I have over 50% of my staff that is over 50 years old, and probably around 20 to 25% that are over 60. Certainly, any number of staff members have varying health concerns and things like that. So I feel like we put together a very good plan right now, that when we do have in-person, that we're able to still be safe and do as best we can with disinfections and temperature checks and masks and all those particular kinds of things. But unfortunately, I stand or sit in front of you from a superintendent lens and trying to take all those things into account. And I feel like right now that my recommendation is that we delay the start of school so that we are able to ensure that we train all of our staff, we make sure that our parents are ready, and that we can roll this out the right way, and that we delay the start of school till after Labor Day to be September 8th. But then also, I feel like the only recommendation that I have right now is that we start the beginning of the school year in a virtual environment with our distance learning model. This allows us the opportunity to monitor those numbers as we get closer, but also that we provide this information to our staff and our families so that they can prepare. I know we still have a month away. I mean, even from the 24th, it's a month away, but I'm sure that some of you have already fielded those questions as I have. Some people feel like it's tomorrow and that they just need to know what's happening so that they can be fully aware. So rather than wait, I feel like it's the perfect opportunity for me to go ahead and provide this opportunity or this information to our families if the board approves these recommendations. So that's a lot of information and a lot more talking that I typically want to do, but I feel like there's a lot of things that I wanted to lay the groundwork for. There's a lot of additional questions that once this decision is made either way, there's certainly a lot of other components that we need to make sure that we do and follow up on. But I know you have a lot of questions. And so rather than me trying to anticipate every one of your questions, I'm happy to field all those and then make sure that if there's any further discussion before I would ask a recommendation.
Where do you want to start, Mr. President? Because you know I have some.
That's what I said. I was on mute. I was like, come on, Monica, go for it.
All right, well, I'm not going to temporarily unmute. I'm going to unmute. All right, so first question I have is, could you expand a little more on the scenario if we delay start of school? Why? Is in my mind that would be so that we could have better chance to be in person, versus if we are going to start virtually, why delay start of school? So can you expand a little more on the reasoning behind doing both at the same time?
Absolutely, because to be honest with you, I was one of the ones pushing for, no, I want to start the same time. And we're going to start, if we start virtually, I want to start the exact same time. But that's the reason why I have a team and why I respect and respect their opinions, is listening to that team, listening to my team of administrators over the last few days, talk about concerns around the timelines and whether they would have enough time to effectively do or wanting them to do. They want to do things very well. They know that we need to do better. And so in order to effectively do both, I felt like it was the best option for both. So number one, delaying the start of school allows us an opportunity to bring our teachers back a little bit early. So right now, our teachers and certified staff, classified staff would be starting 5 days before the start of school. This would allow us even an additional opportunity to bring them back 5 additional days, which we would be able to work out with them on other PD days that we would give back to them so that we don't have to modify any of their contracts from the 188 days for our certificated staff. But then also more time between right now and that time when they would return for our C&I department to make sure that they have everything together that they would need. Canvas was approved last board meeting. Since then, we've had several conversations with them to make sure that they're going to be ready for our rollout so they can do trainings and all the things that we're going to need from them. There's a lot of other school districts that obviously are implementing Canvas now based upon what's gone on. And so there was some concerns from their end as well if they could make our timeline. And I felt like they were going to be able to do that, but we also don't like to have anything be by chance. And so this extra time allows for not only our C&I department to be ready, but also for our teachers to be ready, for us to roll this out to our parents in a better way. And all that would just take just some additional time.
Okay. So I think you maybe kind of answered then, maybe not. So delaying the start of school for students, but not for teachers, as you mentioned, not adding, additional days to their contract. We still have a required number of hours for the students. And currently our last day of school is scheduled for May 26th without snow days. So does that mean we will now extend the school year for the students? But I mean, how do we do that without adding, days for the teachers? And then also, how do you envision potential snow days to not put us into, late June, early July?
Sure. No, the nice part about prior to any of this going on in March, our state had already approved a distance learning type model. Alternate methods of instruction is what they call it. And so they were already heading towards an avenue to where they were going to allow school districts to make up time for snow days. In particular, it was what they were going for. So in particular, for example, if we were able to throw out an assignment and say, this is what your assignment is for a snow day for you to complete. If all of our students completed it within a certain period of time, we would upload that and then we'd be able to account attendance for that snow day, effectively ending us potentially having to take any snow days ever again and having to tack them on to the end. So we were already moving toward there anyways, and doing that. This just kind of maybe kick that into overdrive in terms of what our delivery system is going to be and making it even better. So number one, I would say it could potentially still extend. I think the 6 snow days would come into play potentially, but also with the PD days and with the flexibility that we're working through with the state right now, they're increasing the flexibility of what we can count for attendance. So for example, we have some professional development days. We could actually still continue to do distance learning and say, half this day is going to be professional development. The other half is going to be distance learning, or we've given you these assignments. This is one of your days to still do assignments. Just because our teachers are, you're not coming into school on this particular professional development day, so you can still do work on that day. We could still potentially capture attendance on that day as well. So there are some of those components that we actually may be able to capture attendance and not add a day to our teachers' contracts as well. So there are a few things that we still have to work through with DESE to make sure that we are on the right path with each one of those, but those are the things that we're looking through that we think that we'll be able to accomplish.
Okay, that's good. So there's a certain subset of our student population that are special education, IEP, 504s. I envision they might struggle in various ways in the virtual learning world. Do you have any thoughts on how to accommodate that with the pushback of school and a start with virtual learning?
Yeah, one thing that I would say to the board, and I'll continue to update you on this, but I'm also not looking at an all or nothing kind of approach to some of the groups that we may be able to start bringing back. I think we have some small groups of students that we may start doing some additional work with. So in particular, you're talking about some of our special populations. We have some of our students that absolutely need some additional work. And so how do we make sure that we give them that? Some of those things may need to be in person. And so as long as we're still following all the guidelines, since we have not been told to quarantine and close down like we were in March, we have some flexibility potentially to bring in some small groups or individual populations to ensure that we're meeting IEP goals and those things. So I know Ms. Malloy has been working through those particular pieces with Ms. DeAnda and trying to make sure that what would that look like and how would we do that. So I don't have all the answers there, but absolutely there are potentially ways that we could bring out some of those small groups to ensure that they are getting the additional supports that they need, not just in the virtual environment.
Okay. Hold on with me, team. I got 3 more. I'm trying to get through them quickly. In the same vein, we have another subset of population in our high school, in the junior and senior level, that do dual learning, right? So they go to hands-on schools like Herndon, or there's a population that does the college and high school credit half and half. How would that play out in a virtual world?
It's a fantastic question. I'm very glad you brought that up. We've actually reached out to them, and one of the things that we found out was they're not planning right now to do that virtually, but they are planning to still go in person. So we still have to do that, and we would still need to make sure that we get our kids there. So that's a conversation to have with some of those students to make sure that they know as of today. Again, that was as of, I'm not even gonna say today, that was maybe as of Wednesday or Thursday. My team can correct me if that's wrong, but it was this week. Next week, it may totally change, and they may decide that they're going to do something virtually. But right now, they're still planning on doing those in person and not changing their schedule at all. And so therefore, we'd have to work with those families to still provide transportation and to still all do those exact same things. So it's potential that even if most of our students, or 98% of our students, are in a distance learning or virtual model, that we're still providing education for a few, taking those students to Herndon. And so we may still have some additional moving parts, which is part of what adds to the kind of complexity of some of these situations.
Okay. So again, kind of following that vein of what do things look like in an all virtual world, extracurricular activities. We talked last board meeting about, I believe I asked the question, if a family chose virtual versus in person, how does that look for them with regards to extracurricular activities? So if we move to starting with only a virtual option, what do you envision that looks like for those students that are in sports or before after school clubs or activities?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is the survey that we put out to our families on Friday was what I mentioned at the board meeting and what I put in my video, partially. So we knew that we had, according to the survey, we knew we were going to have some families that no matter what, I don't care what you do, like I'm not sending my kid back until there's a vaccine, or until whatever numbers are going to be, whatever they feel like is safe for their child. So we had to provide that as an option. Part of that option is a contract that we have through Springfield Public Schools with Launch, and they have some deadlines associated with that. So we knew we needed to get that out, and we needed to have our families select what they were planning on doing. If a student is in a virtual environment, we have told them that obviously they'll stay in the virtual environment until at least January, and then have that option to come back. We've said also, and we will continue to make sure and promote this, is that if you're in the all virtual environment, you can continue to participate in extracurricular activities that are before and after school. Nothing during the school day, but before and after school activities would still be a potential for you to be involved with. That being said, Misha has also come out a couple of weeks ago and made a comment around there will be no sports. If the school opens up in an all online virtual environment, there will be no sports for you to participate in. I can tell you, just like everything else, a lot of things have happened since they came out with that statement. And what I'm hearing is that there is some flexibility now on that. And we're trying to get some clarifications from the Suburban Conference and from Misha on whether we could actually still have some athletics going on, even if we are in a virtual environment to start the school year. So hopefully, to answer your question, I would say we believe that there's still going to be extracurricular activities in some particular way. And we believe that if you're in all virtual, you can still participate. But the number one thing would be that as long as Misha continues to be flexible in that, we do believe that we're going to be able to have sports. So we're trying to get 100% clarification around that this next week, and then be able to communicate that out to our families as well.
Okay, last question. This is the one everybody always cringes at. So funding. So we've all been watching, what's been happening with funding cuts. And my concern is around if we're in an all virtual environment for, a number of weeks, how how are we going to track attendance, and how is that going to affect our funding if we don't have a large subset of students that aren't, joining Zooms or turning in work or whatever? Is that going to affect what we can do?
Well, let me say, again, there is some flexibility with DESE, but the number one thing that I would say is it starts with us. We said that we have to be better. The engagement has to be better. That's part of what is, I mean, I'm not going to say that that our Canvas is going to solve that problem. What's going to solve that problem is we know more now, and we know what we didn't do well before. And so the last 3 days, even with administrators talking about how do we make sure that we're supporting our teachers differently now, because we were trying to adapt to that too. And I don't know that we tried to help. I'm not sure that we were as much help to sometimes of our staff, especially the first 3, 4, 5 weeks. I felt like we got better at it as we went along, but it starts with our instructional staff, making sure that they are still building relationships with every single group. But then how do we utilize every staff member that we have differently than what we did before, and checking in? What does tutoring look like? Just because we're in an online environment doesn't mean we still can't have tutoring, and we're checking in. The number one thing I heard from parents was, and even a couple of you as board members that were parents at the time, saying, the personal connections that those teachers made when they called me and they personally reached out, and they knew I was struggling, my student was struggling, and they called and we did that. That made all the difference in the world. Even if I wasn't a great student in the virtual environment, I was working with my teacher and doing that. So how do we do that even more to make sure that there's a higher level of engagement? That's the number one thing. The number two thing is it is going to be a little bit tricky, but I mean, again, I'm maybe more of a glass half full than sometimes my team would like for me to be. But think about sick days. Again, if you're in an all online environment for the first little bit, there may still be sick days, but we're counting attendance differently than what we were before, because if I'm getting work and there's a progression through, we're counting attendance a little bit differently. So that's part of that flexibility that DESE has offered, knowing that, hey, we're in a whole different world than what we were. We're going to have to provide some flexibility. You may have seen that even our attendance isn't even going to be held against us in terms of an accountability measure for this next year, because it's going to be a little bit wonky. And so that's my official term for it, is wonky. But we even have some additional pieces from them and guidance of this is how this will work to make sure that you're still getting your funding, because that is one of the number one concerns is our average daily attendance and things. So I'm not going to say that we have every piece of the answers there and every bit of that figured out, but based on what we're seeing right now, even Anne Marie is not necessarily at a heightened level of concern yet about that particular piece. Remember also that our ADA also kind of goes back and we're looking at our enrollment for the last 2 years and current year. And so we do have some flexibility there also of looking at, hopefully our enrollment stays high and those pieces. And so we might be able to look at some of those components for the last 2 years also if we need to have that evened out just a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Other questions that I can hopefully answer that would, give you additional information that I know that you desperately need.
You kind of touched on rolling out the Canvas to teachers, but could you talk a little bit more about how it'll be rolled out to parents and maybe even students?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I would say 2 different things. Certainly with the teaching staff and the instructional staff overall, that's a very big concern of ours to make sure that we have the training set up and those pieces, but it's not going to matter if our parents don't know how to use it either. So we've created, and our instructional team has been creating modules around that to ensure that our teachers can do that from anywhere and at any time. So it's not, hey, we're doing this training at 9 o'clock on Tuesday and you have to be there for an hour and a half, but that we have these modules set up to where they can do some of that professional development on their own time. As a parent, so when you log in, our goal is that when you log in, that you would be able to watch a series of videos to train you on what's happening. Some people are detail oriented. I just want to see the documents. I want to read that so I learn it. So we'd have the documents there, but also easy training videos for our parents to be able to watch so that they're able to navigate everything that we've seen thus far, and other parents that we know from districts that we have as staff members that have used Canvas, and other administrators that we have that have used Canvas agree that it's a very user-friendly approach, because everything's in one spot, and rather than 5 or 6 different things and logging into 5 or 6 different places. So, but we want to make sure that the parent rollout is a piece of this also, and that we have plenty of time to get them up to speed. So therefore, to one of Monica's questions, we don't have, God forbid, we're still here, say in October, that in October, all of a sudden we figure out that one of our students has not been doing anything and the parent couldn't get on, and we're constantly monitoring and checking in, and that they're able to move forward with those pieces as easily as possible.
I just thought of another question. Sorry, guys. You just made the comment about, potentially being here in October. So you're asking for us to approve a delayed start and then start in all virtual. Do you have currently, today at this moment, a recommendation on how long that would remain before we could potentially go to some in person, or are you going to completely keep it fluid?
Well, I would rather it not be just fluid in terms of completely open. I have a meeting on Tuesday with the Jackson County Health Department in Frank White's office with a group of superintendents. And one of the things that we're proposing and looking at is a series of guidelines that would help us monitor based upon the numbers that I showed you particular, that we would be able to see and monitor, say, hey, here's this. If the numbers get to this point, then we can progress, almost like the phases of Jackson County overall, that we would be able to progress and move forward with the exact same kind of approach. So, okay, so it gets to this point. Once it gets to this point, then you can move to this phase and you can move to this phase. And then by the time the numbers get to this approach, then you can start bringing back all of your students in that particular regard. So I think that's one of the things that I would say that we want to do. So your initial question, for me, immediately, I'm thinking like the first 3 weeks of school for now, because I think it gives at least enough time for everyone to prepare and to plan. But I know that there's at least one district that has gone for the first 9 weeks. So maybe I'd rather wait till I talk to the Jackson County Health Department. And if I have that, then I can share those pieces with the board and certainly bring that back into the August board meeting to share with everybody as well, so that we can be as open and honest with the public of, this is the numbers that we're tracking and this is how we're doing it. And so therefore you would feel safe when the numbers get here because the health department says so. Does that answer your question? I apologize.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a vision then for how much notice you would give to families for when, hey, things are looking great, we're going to open up in a week or in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think I don't want it to be week to week. I think we're always going to be kind of thinking at least 3 to 4 weeks out, like a month in advance. So that way we're giving plenty of notice to everybody. Just like right now, it being the 25th, I'm thinking we're a month away from where it was going to start. And I wanted to make sure that we can give that information now. So if they know that and they know it's going to be delayed a little bit, I would think that within the next week or two, I'd be able to state, based on what I'm hearing from the health department and what I see, we will start with this being, let's say, the first 3 weeks or the first 9 weeks to give a little bit more space. Then once we're in the first 3 weeks of school, first 2 weeks of school, I can give another update saying, okay, we've now gone through with several different weeks of positive numbers. Therefore, we're going to begin our plan based upon what we've given out. And we're going to start bringing out groups that will begin on this additional date a couple weeks later. So that way they would constantly know, because I know families are going to have to make decisions and going to have to do any number of different things to make sure that they have help for their kids and somebody at home and those kind of pieces. I mean, I'm very well aware of that also. And so I always want to make sure that we're at least several weeks in advance so they can make arrangements.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then when we go to hybrid and the kids might potentially only be going 2 days a week, is there a plan for how you will decide what students go on which 2 days?
Yes and no. What I'd say was what we started out with was high school kind of a lot of times drives these kind of things just because of the nature of their schedule. And so we kind of start with that. But when you think about the high school, once we figure out which groups would go on the A and B, the other thing that I've heard and that we're concerned with is what if, let's say, Mr. Green, and he's got students at several different levels. Would he have to have kids, half of his kids go on 2 days and the other half go on the other days? How do we align those schedules? So that way I don't have younger kids at home by themselves while their older kids are at school and vice versa. So there'd be some challenges with that. Obviously, that's not an easy process for us to kind of work through. But also, the health department has kind of stated that they're less concerned at the moment with the way the virus is spreading amongst our pre-K through third grade students, and feel like there may be an opportunity for us to bring that group of students back first, and actually it be our older students that we bring back last. And so that's one of the guidance kind of things that we're looking at, as well as potentially starting with our youngest, and which would actually make me feel very, very good, because I feel like that's one of the groups that I worry about. Not I worry about all of them, but our pre-K kids that are so tactile and need that, and our kindergarten students, but our youngest population, to be able to bring them back and have them be in person, if at all possible, would be very, very helpful. Did that answer that question? I always want to make sure that I,
Yes, as well as you could.
okay. My apologies.
Okay.
Any other further questions? Not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, this is Monica Terry. I'd like to make a motion that we approve starting the 2020-2021 school year with distance learning, and amend the 2020-2021 school year calendar to move the first day of school to September 8th, 2020.
Damon Green, second the motion.
It's been properly moved and seconded, and I don't have all that in front of me, so I'll say the recommendation as presented. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Don Kessinger,
Aye.
Don Foy,
Aye.
Monica Terry,
Aye.
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Chuck Cornforth,
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much.
If I may, sir, I really appreciate all of you knowing the difficult position that we are all in. But I can't tell you how much it helps me as a superintendent to know that you're asking good questions, and all the same questions that you're getting in the community, but also to know that we have your support when we bring the recommendations, that you're supportive of those, knowing that this is the last recommendation that I really wanted to bring to this board. It's not what I wanted to do, but certainly feel like this is kind of where we are with the information that I've been receiving. So I appreciate the board very, very much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. I believe it can be said that we truly appreciate you and the work that you do and the stress that you're under in your team. So thank you. All right, not everyone at once. We talked about this earlier, unless we want to sit here.
Move we adjourn. Monica Terry.
Damon Green, I second.
Properly moved and second that we adjourn. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Don Kessinger,
Aye.
Don Foy,
Aye.
Monica Terry,
Aye.
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Chuck Cornforth. Chuck, I think you're muted.
There we go. Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you so much again for your time and information, efforts, questions, the whole nine.